America's truck market is cracking wide open. Across the country, millions of shiny new pickups aren't cruising highways or hauling loads. They're just sitting, unsold, baking under the sun in endless lots. And while that might sound like a dealer problem, it's not. Because when 5 million trucks collide with a market that no longer wants them, the fallout doesn't stop at the showroom. It lands squarely on your wallet, your job, and even your community. Prices are falling fast, trust in automakers is evaporating, and what's coming next could reset the entire industry. Everyone who thought pickups were a safe bet is about to face a hard truth. The golden age of trucks is ending, and the crash has only just begun. Dealer lots across America look less like places of business and more like graveyards of chrome and steel. Rows upon rows of brand new trucks sit untouched, collecting dust, their once polished bodies dulled by months in the sun. A healthy market usually moves inventory in about 60 days. But by the summer of 2025, many dealers reported double that. Over 100 days worth of full-size pickups stacked like dominoes, waiting for buyers who never arrived. And here's the brutal math. Every single one of those unsold trucks bleeds money. Dealers pay daily financing fees to keep them on the lot, while manufacturers keep pushing more units off assembly lines, hoping demand magically reappears. Instead, the glut deepens. In some places, trucks sit for nearly half a year before a buyer even thinks about them, losing tens of thousands in value before they ever hit the road. Consumers notice. Stories spread like wildfire online. Buyers who paid top dollar at the peak only to see identical trucks discounted weeks later. That sense of betrayal triggers hesitation. Hesitation feeds oversupply, and the vicious cycle spins faster. What started as a slowdown has turned into a full-blown flood, and it's only the first domino to fall. Because the real explosion didn't start with buyers at all. It began with politicians. When leaders rolled out new tariffs in early 2025, the promise was simple: protect American jobs, boost domestic production, and make trucks more patriotic. But what rolled out onto dealer lots was chaos. Suddenly, two identical pickups carried wildly different price tags just because one was built in Mexico or Canada and the other in Michigan. In some cases, the difference was nearly $10,000. Shoppers didn't see patriotism in that, they saw nonsense. If the same truck could cost thousands more depending on where it rolled off the line, then what did MSRP even mean anymore? That single crack shattered decades of carefully managed brand trust. And buyers didn't take it quietly. Online forums lit up, communities started pooling VIN data, spreadsheets spread across social media, and everyday drivers became detectives, decoding where each truck was built and using that information as a weapon in negotiations. Dealers who once thrived on secrecy suddenly faced customers armed with printouts and proof. The result? A collapse of confidence. Buyers delayed purchases waiting for clarity. Others pitted dealers against each other, playing the system to squeeze discounts. And while politicians boasted about protecting jobs, the market was being destabilized from the ground up. But the real pain wasn't at the policy level. It was in the showrooms, where silence replaced sales and desperation took hold. Step inside a truck-heavy dealership today, and you might hear the loudest sound of all: silence. Foot traffic has dropped by more than a third compared to last year, transforming once bustling showrooms into echo chambers of unsold inventory. For dealers, that silence is brutal. Each truck sitting idle racks up more than $20 a day in financing fees. Multiply that across hundreds of vehicles, and a single dealership can bleed tens of thousands every week without selling a thing. Desperation is changing behavior. Salespeople who once held firm on sticker prices now chase customers into parking lots, begging for offers. Ads promise loss leader base models at impossibly low prices, but once you're inside, the pressure begins. Upsells into luxury trims, financing gimmicks, and inflated trade-in values designed to hide collapsing transaction prices. For buyers, the leverage is flipped. For the first time in decades, shoppers hold the upper hand. armed with information and backed by an ocean of unsold trucks. But while dealers scramble to survive, the factories feeding them are facing a fire of their own. On the surface, the battle looks like it's playing out on dealer lots. But behind the scenes, the real inferno is raging inside the factories. For more than a decade, full-size pickups were Detroit's golden goose, the single product line that carried massive profit margins, subsidized smaller cars, and bankrolled the transition to electric vehicles. Those fat margins are now evaporating. Every time a truck is discounted by $10, $15, or even $20,000 just to move it off the lot, the profit cushion manufacturers once relied on disappears. Instead of minting money, assembly lines are churning out liabilities. And with every extra truck built beyond what the market can absorb, the pressure compounds. Executives are caught in a brutal dilemma. Cut production and face layoffs, idle plants, and political backlash, or keep the lines running and watch unsold inventory metastasize into a balance sheet nightmare. So far, most have chosen the latter, clinging to the hope that demand will bounce back. But the evidence says otherwise. Consumer incomes haven't kept up with years of truck price inflation. Buyers are smarter, more cautious, and increasingly unwilling to play by old rules. And looming over everything is a dangerous clock. 2026's stripped-down reset models are already on the way, making today's overpriced trucks even harder to sell. The golden goose isn't just limping, it's on fire. And just when manufacturers spot they only have to battle oversupply and discounts, a new kind of competition arrived. Not from Detroit, not even from Japan, but from disruptors who rewrote the rules of the game entirely. Just as legacy automakers wrestled with unsold trucks and vanishing profits, a new wave of competitors delivered the gut punch no one saw coming. EV startups and overseas brands began flooding headlines with stripped-down, bare-bones electric trucks priced as low as $20,000. They weren't flashy, they weren't luxury, but they did one thing perfectly. They exposed how bloated and overpriced the American pickup had become. For decades, Detroit convinced buyers that a truck needed to cost $60,000, $70,000, or more, that advanced tech, leather interiors, and endless trim levels justified sky-high prices. But when buyers saw functional EV trucks that hauled, towed, and ran on a fraction of the cost, the illusion cracked wide open. Suddenly, those $80,000 luxury editions looked less like symbols of status and more like anchors dragging owners into debt. YouTube reviews and TikTok clips spread the word faster than any ad campaign. Young buyers, once priced out of the truck market entirely, saw these new models as accessible, future-proof, and, most importantly, cheap. And while Detroit doubled down on bloated profit margins, disruptors stole the next generation of customers out from under them. The message was clear. The old rules no longer applied. Trucks didn't have to cost more than a starter home. They didn't even need gas. And for the industry, this wasn't just competition, it was humiliation. But even disruptors couldn't shield the market from the storm that was already brewing. Collapsing resale values, sending shockwaves straight to the people who thought they owned solid investments. For years, one of the biggest selling points of a pickup was simple. They held their value. A truck bought today could be sold a few years later for nearly the same price, sometimes even more. That belief turned trucks into more than just vehicles. They were financial safety nets. But in 2025, that safety net ripped wide open. Owners who financed a $70,000 pickup just 2 years ago are now finding their trucks worth barely half that on trade-in. Some reports show values dropping nearly 40% in under 18 months, an unprecedented collapse. The so-called equity buyers once counted on has flipped into negative territory, leaving thousands of owners upside down on their loans. And people are furious. Online, forums and comment sections overflow with outrage. Buyers vent about being trapped in loans bigger than their truck's actual value. Others post horror stories of trading in at dealerships only to be offered insulting numbers that don't even cover what they still owe. The sense of betrayal is spreading like wildfire because trucks weren't supposed to behave like this. That anger isn't just directed at dealers either. It's aimed at manufacturers, politicians, and the entire system that convinced millions to buy at the peak. Resale values collapsing don't just hurt wallets, they shatter trust. And once trust is gone, the foundation of the market begins to crumble. But as frustrated owners fight with dealerships over trade-ins, another shadow is creeping in, one that could turn frustration into something far more dangerous: the risk of mass loan defaults. As resale values tank, owners are being squeezed into an impossible corner. Millions of truck buyers finance their vehicles at sky-high prices with record-length loans, 6, even 7 years. Now, with trucks worth far less than the debt attached to them, thousands are upside down, owing 10, 20, sometimes 30,000 more than their vehicles are worth. For many, the math simply doesn't work. Insurance premiums, repair costs, and ballooning monthly payments stack on top of everyday living expenses. Families that stretch their budgets to chase the dream of a new truck are starting to miss payments, some quietly, others in waves. And every missed payment adds fuel to a fire that banks are already terrified to acknowledge. Lenders build portfolios on the assumption that trucks were safe bets, high-value assets that wouldn't lose money quickly. That illusion has shattered. Repossessions are climbing, auctions are flooded with unwanted pickups, and every repossessed truck sells for less than the debt it carried, leaving lenders holding the bag. What began as a buyer's crisis is mutating into a credit crisis. And here's the chilling part: this isn't just about trucks. If defaults snowball, the shock could spill into housing, small business loans, even regional banks that leaned heavily on auto lending. The same financial ecosystem that once thrived on trucks is now at risk of being poisoned by them. The collapse of America's truck market isn't just an industry story anymore. It's a financial contagion. And what happens next could echo far beyond the highways. For decades, America's pickup wasn't just a vehicle. It was a symbol of strength, reliability, and economic security. But symbols can break, and the truck market has shattered faster than anyone imagined. Oversupply flooded the lots, tariffs shattered trust, dealerships drowned in silence, profits melted, disruptors rewrote the rules, resale values collapsed, and now the financial system itself is starting to feel the shockwaves. What began as a slowdown in sales has spiraled into a chain reaction, exposing how fragile the entire system really was. And the scariest part? The story isn't finished. Every repossession, every factory slowdown, every frustrated buyer adds another crack to an industry that once seemed unshakable. So the next time you see those endless rows of shiny new pickups baking in the sun, remember, they're not just trucks, they're warning signs. Warning signs of how fast confidence can vanish, how quickly the tide can turn, and how even the strongest icons can collapse when no one's paying attention. And the question that remains is chilling. If the truck market, America's most reliable cash cow, can implode this fast, what's next?